Hello everyone, and welcome back to Read, Learn, and Listen. I'm Clara.
I am Nico. Thanks for joining us today for another exciting episode of our English learning podcast.
Today we have something really special for all our beginner learners out there. We're going to talk about two amazing techniques that can help you improve your English listening and speaking skills.
That's right, Sarah. Today's topic is slow listening and shadowing for beginners. These are two powerful methods that many English learners don't know about, but they can make a huge difference in your progress.
Before we start, let me ask you, Mike, when you were learning your second language, what was the hardest part for you?
Oh, definitely listening. I remember feeling so frustrated because native speakers talked so fast. I could understand individual words, but when people spoke naturally, it sounded like one long word to me.
Exactly. And that's why today's techniques are so important. We're going to show you how to train your ears step by step, starting slow and building up your confidence.
So whether you're A1 or A2 level, or even if you're just starting your English journey, this episode is perfect for you. We'll explain everything clearly and give you practical tips you can use right away.
Let's start with our first technique. Slow listening. Mike, can you explain what slow listening is?
Let's start with our first technique, slow listening. Slow listening is exactly what it sounds like. Listening to English content that is spoken more slowly than normal speed. But it's not just about speed. It's about choosing the right materials and using them in the right way.
Think of it like learning to drive a car. You don't start on the highway going 100 kilometers per hour, right? You start in an empty parking lot, going slowly, learning the basics.
That's a perfect comparison. With slow listening, we start with content that's easier to understand, spoken at a slower pace, so your brain can process each word and understand the meaning.
Now, some people think that slow listening is cheating, or that it won't help them understand real English. But that's completely wrong. Slow listening is like building a foundation for a house. If you don't have a strong foundation, the house will fall down. If you don't train your ears with slow content first, you'll struggle with normal speed forever.
Exactly. And here's something interesting. When you first listen to slow content, it might still seem fast to you. That's completely normal. Your brain needs time to recognize English sounds and patterns.
Here are some great options for beginners.
First, podcasts like ours that are made specifically for English learners. We speak clearly and at a good pace for beginners.
Second, YouTube channels for English learners. There are many channels where teachers speak slowly and explain things clearly.
Third, audiobooks for beginners or children's audiobooks. These are usually spoken slowly and use simple vocabulary.
I'd also add English learning apps that have audio lessons. Many of these have speed controls where you can make the audio even slower if you need to.
Good point. And here's a pro tip for our listeners. Most video and audio players have speed settings. You can slow down almost any content to 0.75 or 0.5 speed when you're practicing.
But how should beginners actually practice slow listening? Should they just listen passively? Great question. Active listening is much more effective than passive listening.
When you listen actively, you're focused and engaged. You're not just letting the sounds wash over you. You're trying to understand, you're paying attention to new words, and you're thinking about the meaning.
Right. Here's a simple method for active slow listening.
First, choose a short audio clip, maybe 2 to 3 minutes long. Don't try to listen to a 30-minute podcast all at once when you're starting. Second, listen to the whole clip once without stopping. Don't worry if you don't understand everything. Just get a general feeling for what it's about. Third, listen again and try to identify words you know. Maybe you'll catch words like the, and, is, going, or other simple words. That's great progress.
Fourth, listen a third time and focus on new words. When you hear a word you don't know, try to guess its meaning from the context.
Finally, if the audio has a transcript, read along while listening. This helps you connect the sounds to the written words.
That's a wonderful method. And here's something important for our listeners to remember. Don't expect to understand everything immediately. Language learning is like building muscle. You need to practice regularly and be patient with yourself.
Let me share a personal story. When I started learning English, I was so impatient. I wanted to understand movies and TV shows right away, but I was frustrated because I couldn't understand anything. Then I discovered slow listening materials, and everything changed.
I started with very simple content. Children's stories, basic conversations, simple news reports. At first, even these seemed difficult. But after a few weeks of daily practice, I noticed something amazing. The slow content started to feel normal. And when I went back to regular speed content, it didn't seem as impossible anymore.
That's exactly what happens. Your brain adapts to the sounds and patterns of English. It's like training for a sport. If you want to run a marathon, you don't start by running 42 kilometers on your first day. You start with short distances and build up slowly.
Now, how long should people practice slow listening each day? For beginners, I recommend starting with just 10 to 15 minutes per day. Quality is more important than quantity. It's better to focus completely for 10 minutes than to half listen for an hour while doing other things.
And consistency is key. It's much better to practice 10 minutes every day than to practice for 2 hours once a week. Your brain needs regular exposure to English sounds to develop good listening skills.
Here's another important tip. Don't worry about perfect understanding. If you understand 30 to 40% of what you hear, that's actually very good for a beginner. Understanding will improve with time and practice.
Many students get discouraged because they think they should understand 100% immediately, but that's not realistic, and it's not necessary for progress.
Now let's move on to our second technique, shadowing. This is one of the most powerful methods for improving both your listening and speaking skills at the same time.
So what exactly is shadowing? Shadowing means listening to English audio and trying to repeat what you hear at the same time, like an echo. You're following the speaker's words, rhythm, and intonation as closely as possible.
Think of it like being someone's shadow. A shadow follows a person everywhere they go, copying their movements. When you do shadowing practice, you're copying the speaker's words and the way they say them.
Now, this might sound scary for beginners. You might think, but I can't speak fast enough. Or, I don't know all the words. Don't worry, that's completely normal and expected.
When you start shadowing, you won't be able to repeat everything perfectly. In fact, you might only be able to say a few words here and there, but that's okay. The important thing is to try.
Let me explain why shadowing is so effective. When you do shadowing, you're training multiple skills at the same time.
First, you're training your ears to recognize English sounds and rhythms.
Second, you're training your mouth and tongue to make English sounds correctly.
Third, you're learning the natural rhythm and melody of English speech.
Fourth, you're building confidence in speaking, even if you're just repeating what you hear.
That's right. And here's something really important for beginners. You don't need to understand every word to benefit from shadowing. Even if you're just making sounds that are similar to what you hear, you're still training your pronunciation and getting familiar with English rhythms.
Now, let's talk about how to choose good materials for shadowing practice. For beginners, the same materials that work for slow listening also work well for shadowing.
Simple podcasts for English learners, short dialogues from English learning apps, children's audiobooks, or even nursery rhymes and simple songs.
The key is to choose content that's not too long and not too complicated. Start with something you can mostly understand, even if you can't say all the words yet.
Here's a step-by-step method for shadowing practice.
Step 1. Listen to your chosen audio without trying to speak. Just focus on understanding the general meaning and getting familiar with the sounds.
Step 2. Listen again and try to hum along with the rhythm. Don't worry about words yet. Just follow the music of the language.
Step 3. Now try to repeat some words. Start with the words you know well. Don't worry if you miss most of it.
Step 4. Practice the same audio multiple times. Each time, try to say a little bit more. Maybe today you can say 20% of the words, tomorrow 25%, and so on.
Step 5. Focus on copying the speaker's intonation and rhythm, not just the words. This is what makes you sound more natural.
I want to emphasize something important here. Shadowing is not about perfect pronunciation or saying every single word correctly. It's about training your mouth to move in English patterns and getting comfortable with the sounds of the language.
Many beginners worry too much about making mistakes, but making mistakes is part of learning. Every mistake teaches you something new.
Here's a great tip for our listeners. Record yourself while doing shadowing practice. You don't need to share it with anyone. It's just for you. Listen to your recording and compare it to the original. You'll be surprised at how much you improve over time.
And don't be hard on yourself when you listen to your first recordings. Everyone sounds strange when they start. I remember listening to my first shadowing attempts and thinking, do I really sound like that? But after a few weeks of practice, I could hear clear improvement.
Now, how is shadowing different from just repeating sentences after the speaker? When you repeat after the speaker, you wait for them to finish, then you say the sentence. Shadowing is different. You're trying to speak at the same time as the speaker, like singing along to a song.
This makes shadowing more challenging, but also more effective. It forces you to process the language faster and trains your brain to think in English rhythms.
Now here's where things get really exciting. You can combine slow listening and shadowing for maximum benefit.
Here's how it works. Start with slow listening to understand the content and get familiar with the words. Then, use the same material for shadowing practice. This combination is incredibly powerful for beginners.
Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you find a 2-minute dialogue about ordering food in a restaurant.
First, you listen to it slowly and actively, following the method we discussed earlier. You focus on understanding the meaning, identifying familiar words, and learning new vocabulary.
Then, once you're familiar with the content, you use the same dialogue for shadowing practice. Because you already understand what's being said, you can focus on pronunciation and rhythm instead of just trying to understand the meaning.
This is brilliant because you're reinforcing the same language patterns in multiple ways. You're training your ears with slow listening and then training your mouth with shadowing, all using the same content.
And here's another benefit. When you use familiar content for shadowing, you're more likely to succeed and feel confident. Success builds motivation, and motivation keeps you practicing.
Let's talk about creating a daily routine that combines both techniques. For beginners, I recommend this schedule.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Focus on slow listening. Choose new content and practice active listening.
Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Focus on shadowing. Use content you've already practiced with slow listening.
Sunday. Review and relax. Maybe listen to some content, just for fun, without pressure to understand everything.
That's a great schedule. And remember, even 10 to 15 minutes per day is enough to see improvement. The key is consistency, not duration.
Now let's address some common challenges beginners face with these techniques.
Challenge number 1. I feel embarrassed about my pronunciation during shadowing.
Remember, you're practicing alone. No one else can hear you. Making mistakes is part of learning. Even native speakers don't speak perfectly all the time.
Challenge number 2. I get frustrated because I can't understand or repeat much.
This is completely normal. Progress in language learning is gradual. Celebrate small victories. If you understood one more word today than yesterday, that's progress.
Challenge number 3. I don't have time for daily practice.
Quality over quantity. Even 5 minutes is better than nothing. You can practice while walking during your commute or while doing household tasks.
Challenge number 4. I don't know if I'm improving.
Keep a learning journal. Write down new words you learn. Note your feelings about each practice session, and occasionally go back to material you used weeks ago. You'll be amazed at how much easier it seems.
Let me share another personal story. When I was learning English, I had a favorite 5-minute dialogue about shopping. I must have listened to it hundreds of times and shadowed it at least 50 times.
At first, I could barely say, "Hello, how are you?" clearly. But after weeks of practice with this one dialogue, I could say the entire conversation naturally, with good pronunciation and rhythm.
More importantly, I started noticing that I could understand similar conversations in real life. The patterns I had practiced over and over again became automatic. That's the power of these techniques.
Now let's talk about something really important: staying motivated. Many people start with great enthusiasm, but give up after a few weeks. How can we avoid this?
First, set realistic expectations. Don't expect to understand movies or speak fluently after a month of practice. Language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Second, celebrate small victories. Did you understand one new word today? That's worth celebrating. Could you shadow a short sentence correctly? Amazing. These small wins add up to big progress over time.
Third, make it enjoyable. Choose content that interests you. If you love cooking, listen to simple cooking videos. If you like animals, find content about pets. When you enjoy the topic, practice doesn't feel like work.
Fourth, find a routine that works for you. Some people are morning learners, others prefer evenings. Some like to practice during their commute. Others prefer quiet time at home. Find what works for your lifestyle.
Here's a motivation technique I love. Keep a progress jar. Every day you practice, put a coin or a small note in a jar. When the jar gets full, treat yourself to something nice. This visual representation of your consistency is very motivating.
Another great idea is to find an accountability partner. This could be a friend who's also learning English, or even a family member who supports your goals. Tell them about your daily practice and ask them to check in with you regularly.
But what if you miss a day? Don't worry. Missing one day doesn't ruin your progress. The important thing is to start again the next day. Don't let perfectionism become your enemy.
I want to share something important about motivation. In the beginning, you might feel very excited and motivated. This is called beginner's enthusiasm, and it's wonderful. But after a few weeks, this initial excitement might fade. This is normal and happens to everyone.
The key is to keep practicing even when you don't feel motivated. This is when habits become more important than motivation. If you practice at the same time every day, it becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth.
Here are some tips for building strong practice habits.
Start very small. Promise yourself just 5 minutes per day in the beginning. It's easier to commit to 5 minutes than to 30 minutes.
Link your practice to an existing habit. For example, practice right after your morning coffee or right before your evening shower.
Prepare everything in advance. Have your audio ready, your notebook nearby, and your practice space organized. Remove any barriers to starting.
Track your practice visually. Use a calendar and mark an X for each day you practice. Seeing a chain of X's is very motivating.
Be flexible but consistent. If you can't do your usual practice, do something smaller. Even 2 minutes of listening is better than nothing.
Now let's talk about dealing with plateaus. A plateau is when you feel like you're not improving anymore, even though you're still practicing. This happens to every language learner.
When you hit a plateau, don't panic. This doesn't mean you've stopped learning. Sometimes your brain needs time to process and organize all the new information you've been giving it.
Here's what you can do during a plateau.
Change your materials. If you've been using the same podcast for weeks, try something new.
Focus on a different aspect. If you've been working on listening, spend more time on shadowing or vice versa.
Review old material. Go back to content you used when you started. You'll be amazed at how easy it seems now.
Take a short break. Sometimes a few days off can refresh your brain and motivation.
Remember why you started learning English. Remind yourself of your goals and dreams.
Let me tell you about my own plateau experience. After about 3 months of practice, I felt like I wasn't improving anymore. I was frustrated and considered quitting.
But then I decided to go back to a podcast episode I had listened to on my very first day of practice. I was shocked. I could understand almost everything, while on that first day, it had sounded like gibberish to me.
This experience taught me that progress isn't always obvious day by day, but it's definitely happening if you keep practicing consistently.
As you get more comfortable with slow listening and shadowing, you can start using these techniques with more challenging content. Here are some advanced tips.
First, gradually increase the speed. If you've been practicing with content at 0.75 speed, try moving to 0.85 speed, then to normal speed.
Second, try shadowing with content that has different accents. English is spoken around the world, and each region has its own accent. Exposing yourself to variety will make you a better listener.
Third, practice with different types of content. Try news reports, interviews, documentaries, or casual conversations. Each type has different vocabulary and speaking patterns.
Fourth, start shadowing without looking at transcripts. This forces you to rely entirely on your ears and makes the practice more challenging.
Here's an advanced technique called selective shadowing. Instead of trying to repeat everything, choose specific elements to focus on.
One day, focus only on copying the speaker's intonation and rhythm without worrying about the exact words.
Another day, focus on pronouncing specific sounds that are difficult for you.
Or focus on shadowing only the questions or only the responses in a dialogue.
This targeted approach can help you improve specific aspects of your speaking and listening.
Now, how do you know when you're ready to move from beginner materials to more advanced content? Here are some signs.
You can understand about 70% of your current practice materials without much effort.
You can shadow short sentences without too much difficulty.
You're starting to notice English sounds and patterns in daily life.
You feel more confident about your pronunciation.
You can understand the main ideas in slightly faster content.
When you reach this level, congratulations! You're no longer a complete beginner, but don't abandon slow listening and shadowing completely. Even advanced learners can benefit from these techniques when learning new vocabulary or working on specific pronunciation issues.
Let's talk about applying these skills in real life. The ultimate goal of listening practice is to understand real English in real situations. Here's how to bridge the gap between practice and real life.
Start with predictable situations. Practice listening to content about topics you might encounter in daily life. Ordering food, asking for directions, shopping, or making appointments.
Use your shadowing skills in conversations. When someone speaks to you, try to internally shadow their intonation and rhythm. This will help you sound more natural when you respond.
Practice with authentic materials gradually. Once you're comfortable with learning materials, try short clips from real podcasts, news broadcasts, or TV shows.
Don't be afraid to ask people to speak more slowly. Most people are happy to help when you explain that you're learning English.
Here's a real-life story from one of our podcast listeners. Maria wrote to us and said, "I used slow listening and shadowing for 6 months. At first, I was scared to speak English at work, but one day, a foreign colleague complimented my pronunciation. She said I sounded very natural. I realized that all those hours of shadowing had trained my mouth to move in English patterns, even when I was nervous.
That's exactly the kind of success story we love to hear. Maria's experience shows that these techniques really work when you practice consistently.
Another listener, Ahmed, told us, "I used to think that fast speech was impossible to understand, but after practicing with slow listening, I started noticing individual words even in fast speech. It's like my ears became trained to catch English sounds. Now I can follow conversations much better."
These stories prove that with patience and practice, anyone can improve their English listening and speaking skills.
Before we finish, let's talk about some common mistakes that beginners make when using slow listening and shadowing techniques, and how to avoid them.
Mistake number 1, choosing material that's too difficult. Many beginners are impatient and want to jump to advanced content immediately. But if the material is too hard, you'll get frustrated and might give up.
Solution: start with content where you can understand at least 30 to 40% of what you hear. It's better to use easy materials successfully than to struggle with difficult ones.
Mistake number 2, trying to understand every single word. Some learners pause after every unknown word and look it up immediately. This interrupts the flow and makes listening feel like a chore.
Solution: focus on general understanding first. If you understand the main idea, that's success. You can look up a few key words later, but don't let vocabulary hunting destroy your listening flow.
Mistake number 3, shadowing too quietly or not speaking at all. Some people are embarrassed about their pronunciation, so they whisper or just move their lips without making sound.
Solution: remember, you're practicing alone. Speak at normal volume. Your mouth and throat muscles need to practice making English sounds actively.
Mistake number 4, giving up too quickly when shadowing feels impossible. Many beginners try shadowing for a few minutes, can't repeat much, and decide it's not for them.
Solution: remember that shadowing is supposed to feel difficult at first. If you can shadow even 20% of what you hear, that's good progress. Keep practicing with the same content until it feels easier.
Mistake number 5, not practicing consistently. Some learners practice for hours one day, then skip several days, then practice again intensively.
Solution: consistent daily practice, even for just 10 minutes, is much more effective than occasional long sessions. Your brain needs regular exposure to improve.
Mistake number 6, comparing yourself to others. Some beginners get discouraged when they see other learners who seem to progress faster.
Solution: everyone learns at their own pace. Focus on your own progress. Compare yourself today to yourself last month, not to other people.
Mistake number 7, not tracking progress. Without tracking, it's easy to feel like you're not improving, even when you are.
Solution: keep a simple learning journal. Note new words you learn, record your feelings about each practice session, and occasionally revisit old materials to see how much easier they've become.
Let me share one more personal story. When I started using these techniques, I made almost all of these mistakes. I chose materials that were too hard. I tried to understand every word, and I gave up several times.
But then I found a simple children's story about a cat and a mouse. It was only 3 minutes long, and I could understand most of it. I listened to this story every day for 2 weeks, and I shadowed it until I could say it perfectly.
This experience taught me that sometimes taking a step back and using easier material actually helps you move forward faster. That simple story gave me the confidence to try more challenging content later.
As we wrap up today's episode, let's remember the key points we've covered.
Slow listening helps train your ears to recognize English sounds and patterns. Start with materials you can partially understand and practice actively, not passively.
Shadowing helps train your mouth to make English sounds and follow English rhythms. Don't worry about perfect pronunciation. Focus on copying the speaker's rhythm and intonation.
Combining both techniques with the same materials is incredibly effective. Use slow listening to understand content, then use shadowing to practice saying it.
Consistency beats intensity. Daily practice, even for just 10 to 15 minutes, will give you better results than occasional long study sessions.
Progress takes time, and that's okay. Celebrate small victories, and don't compare yourself to others.
Most importantly, be patient with yourself. Learning a language is one of the most challenging and rewarding things you can do. Every day you practice, you're getting stronger.
I want to leave you with this thought. Every fluent English speaker you admire started exactly where you are now. They couldn't understand fast speech. They struggled with pronunciation, and they felt frustrated sometimes. But they kept practicing, and eventually they reached their goals.
You can do this too. Your English-speaking future self is proud of you for practicing today.
Remember, we believe in you. Every time you listen to English, every time you practice shadowing, every time you push yourself to try something new in English, you're building the skills that will change your life.
English opens doors to new friendships, better job opportunities, travel experiences, and access to knowledge and entertainment from around the world. Every minute you spend practicing brings you closer to these opportunities.
Before we finish, let me give you a challenge for this week. Choose one piece of English content that's about 3 to 5 minutes long. It could be a short podcast episode, a YouTube video for English learners, or an audiobook chapter.
Listen to it using the slow listening techniques we discussed today. Then, use the same content for shadowing practice. Spend just 10 to 15 minutes each day for 1 week with this same content.
At the end of the week, listen to it one more time and notice how much easier it sounds compared to the first day. This will show you the power of these techniques.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Read, Learn, and Listen. We hope this episode has given you practical tools and motivation for your English learning journey.
Remember to subscribe to our podcast for more helpful episodes, and feel free to contact us with your questions or success stories. We love hearing from our listeners.
Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and keep moving forward. Your English goals are closer than you think.
Until next time, happy learning, and remember, you've got this.